man walk into my machine shop like he owned the place, tablet in hand, measuring tape clipped to his belt like some kind of badge of honor. 29 years old with an MBA still warm from Stanford, and zero calluses on his hands. My name is Henry Parker. I'm 54, and I've been running precision operations at Parker Precision Manufacturing for 28 years. What I didn't know that Tuesday morning was that this kid was about to try to steal everything I'd built. Let me back up. Parker Precision makes components for offshore drilling equipment, stuff that has to work under crushing pressure 2 miles underwater. When a safety valve fails at that depth, people die and the Gulf gets another oil spill. There's no room for cutting corners in this business, but Blake didn't seem to understand that. I started here in 1995, fresh out of a bad divorce and needing steady work. The old man who founded this place, Chuck Foster's dad, took a chance on a guy who knew his way around a lathe but had more attitude than sense. Those early years taught me something you can't learn in business school. That metal doesn't lie. You can sweet-talk customers, manipulate spreadsheets, spin whatever story you want, but when you're machining a pressure vessel component to 0.0005 tolerance, the metal tells you exactly what you did wrong. By 2005, I was running the CNC department. By 2010, I was basically Chuck's right hand for anything technical. We'd built something special here, a crew of 180 craftsmen who could deliver precision work that kept deep-water rigs operating safely. Roberto Martinez on the welding crew could lay perfect beads on exotic alloys most shops wouldn't even attempt. Jim Wilson in quality control caught dimensional errors that would have cost millions in recalls. These weren't just employees you could replace with automation. Then my wife Linda Parker died in an industrial accident at the petrochemical plant across town 4 years ago. Faulty safety system, deferred maintenance, the same story you hear too often in this business. After the funeral, after the lawyers, after the settlement that couldn't bring her back, I threw myself into making sure our shop never cut corners on safety. Chuck understood. We implemented protocols that went beyond OSHA requirements because keeping people safe was worth more than quarterly profits. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Blake. Chuck announced that Tuesday morning, gesturing toward the kid like he was unveiling some revolutionary piece of equipment. He's going to help us optimize our operations for the digital age. The shop floor went quiet. My crew, guys I'd worked alongside for decades, suddenly found their work orders fascinating. Nobody looked at me. Not Roberto from the welding bay, not Jim from quality control who'd shared coffee with me every morning for 15 years. We need to embrace Industry 4.0, Blake said, consulting his tablet. Advanced automation, predictive analytics, lights-out manufacturing. The future is unmanned facilities. Unmanned facilities, like the knowledge in Roberto's hands could be programmed into a robot. Like Jim's ability to spot a hairline crack in titanium could be replaced by machine vision. Henry will help you understand our legacy processes, Chuck said, his hand on Blake's shoulder, while you design our path forward. Legacy processes. That's what they were calling 28 years of problem solving, troubleshooting, and keeping this place running through recessions, hurricanes, and supply chain disasters. By lunch, Blake had commandeered my office, the space where I'd planned safety improvements and met with workers who trusted me to fight for them. The walls that displayed our Safety Excellence Awards 5 years running without a lost time incident were being cleared for some modern art installation that probably cost more than Roberto made in a month. My new workspace was a corner desk near the supply closet with a computer that wheezed when starting up. The phone rang, Roberto calling from the shop floor. "Hank, sorry man, but Blake called a production meeting for department heads only. Said it's time for fresh perspectives." I was being excluded from discussions about my own operation. The processes I'd refined over decades, the safety protocols that had kept every one of my people going home in one piece every night. After hanging up, I found an email from Blake to the entire crew. Efficiency optimization, smart manufacturing, moving beyond traditional methods. Attached was a presentation that made my chest tighten. These weren't just similar ideas to what I'd proposed 2 years ago when Chuck wanted to expand capacity. These were my exact workflow improvements, down to the specific CNC programming modifications for the valve body department. I remembered that presentation like it was yesterday. I'd spent 4 months analyzing our processes, timing every operation, mapping material flow. The centerpiece was a reconfiguration of our machining centers that would increase throughput by 18% while reducing operator fatigue. Chuck had called it interesting but too expensive to implement. Now here it was, word for word, with Blake Henderson's name at the top. But as I read deeper, my engineering background kicked in. Something was fundamentally wrong with his modifications. Blake had taken my efficiency improvements, but stripped out the safety margins I'd built in. Quality checkpoints were eliminated. Inspection frequencies were cut in half. He was promising gains that looked impressive on paper, but would be disasters in practice. My phone buzzed, text from Roberto. "Hank, can you swing by Station 7? Something's not right with the new protocols." I walked out to the shop floor, my real office. The sounds, the smells, the rhythm of production. This was where I belonged. Roberto was standing by the main machining center looking frustrated. "What's the problem?" "This new efficiency protocol Blake rolled out yesterday," he said, showing me a tablet with updated procedures. "He's got us skipping the pressure test verification on the valve seats. Says the CNC programming is precise enough that manual checking is redundant." I looked at the protocol change. My stomach dropped. Those valve seats were critical components for blowout preventers, the last line of defense when a deep water well goes wild. Skip the verification and a faulty seat could cause exactly the kind of catastrophic failure that killed my wife Linda. "Roberto, keep doing the verification. I don't care what the tablet says." But Blake said anyone not following new protocols would be written up for insubordination. There it was. Blake wasn't just stealing my work, he was putting lives at risk to hit his numbers. I walked back through the facility, really looking at what was happening. At the welding station, they'd increased production speed by 25% without adjusting cooling time for the exotic alloys we used. Roberto was shaking his head as newer welders struggled to keep up with heat-affected zones they didn't understand. In quality control, they'd eliminated the redundant inspector who caught defects the automated systems missed. I found Jim Wilson updating work orders on his computer. "Hank, thank God you're here. Look at this." He showed me the new preventive maintenance schedule. Blake had doubled the intervals on everything. Spindle bearings that should be checked monthly were now quarterly. Coolant systems that needed weekly analysis were now monthly. "What did you tell him when he proposed this?" I told him these intervals were set based on manufacturer recommendations and our own failure data. He said I was being overly conservative, that modern equipment doesn't need such frequent maintenance. I looked at the maintenance logs I'd kept for 15 years. Every bearing replacement, every coolant change, every unexpected failure. The data was clear. Our current intervals kept us running at 96.8% uptime. Blake's changes would save money for maybe 6 months, then guarantee expensive failures. A sticky note appeared on my cramped desk at 4:30, my office, 5 p.m., sharp. Blake, I found him behind my old desk, tapping on his phone. He'd already changed out the coffee maker, some fancy single-serve machine instead of the old pot that had brewed coffee for crews working double shifts. "Sit," he said without looking up. I remained standing. He finally glanced up. "Your manufacturing analysis was useful groundwork for today's executive presentation." "You mean my manufacturing analysis?" His smile didn't waver. "Your research provided helpful background." "Certainly, but background isn't architecture, Henry. I've modernized your basic concepts into something actionable for the 21st century. You copied my work word for word in several sections." "That's a serious accusation," he replied, setting his phone down, "especially from someone in your position." My position, the implication was clear. "People who've been at one company too long often grow territorial," he continued. "Chuck understands this transition might be difficult for you." I thought about the guys on the floor following dangerous protocols because they were afraid of being written up, about maintenance schedules that would cause failures, about quality checks being eliminated on components that kept deep water rigs operating safely, about Linda, who died because someone else had made the same cost-cutting decisions Blake was pushing now. "Is that why you excluded me from my own production meeting today?" He sighed theatrically. I needed candid feedback about operational leadership. People aren't comfortable speaking honestly with their former supervisor present. Former supervisor? He'd been here 3 days. "We're restructuring the department next month," he continued. "Some positions will be eliminated, others will evolve. Your future here depends entirely on your ability to adapt." The threat was clear: fall in line or get out. "Is there anything else?" "Yes. The Hartwell Industries audit tomorrow. I'll be handling the presentation." Hartwell was our biggest customer. Their quality manager, Mason Ford, had specifically requested me for their annual facility review. We'd worked together for 10 years, built trust through consistent delivery and transparent communication. Mason specifically asked for me to present. I spoke with Mason this morning. He understands our new direction. Blake was systematically stripping away everything I'd built. My role, my relationships, my reputation. But more than that, he was setting up Parker Precision for failure and taking a lot of good people down with him. That night, I didn't call my buddies to vent or start updating my resume. Instead, I opened my personal files and began working. Not on job applications, but on something that would change everything. What Blake didn't understand about precision manufacturing is that everything leaves traces. Every process change, every safety shortcut, every efficiency gain, it all shows up in the data if you know where to look. And after 28 years, I knew exactly where to look. I'd been tracking our production metrics, failure rates, and equipment performance since I was a junior machinist. Not for this moment specifically, but because in manufacturing, institutional knowledge can mean the difference between life and death. When you're dealing with components for deep-water drilling, there's no such thing as minor details. What I found as I dug through those archives made my hands shake. Blake's innovations weren't just copied from my proposals. They systematically eliminated safety protocols I'd implemented after the accident that killed Linda. Equipment failures, deferred maintenance, corner cutting disguised as efficiency, minus the exact same pattern that had caused her death. The coffee pot in my kitchen worked overtime as I cross-referenced maintenance schedules, failure patterns, and safety incidents. Every piece of data told the same story. Blake's changes would create exactly the conditions that led to industrial accidents. But there was more. As I traced the connections, I realized Blake's background didn't add up. His previous company, Advanced Systems Solutions in Louisiana, had declared bankruptcy 10 months after implementing similar digital transformation initiatives. I pulled their public filings, their insurance claims, their safety records. The pattern was identical. Deferred maintenance, reduced quality controls, safety protocols eliminated for efficiency. Advanced Systems Solutions had seen an 8-month spike in productivity numbers, just long enough for quarterly reports to look good. Then the equipment failures started. A spindle bearing failure that shut down production for 4 weeks, a quality control miss that resulted in a massive recall, a safety incident that triggered OSHA investigation and fines that crippled the company financially. But looking deeper into the timeline, I found something that made my coffee cup rattle against the table. 4 months before Advanced Systems Solutions declared bankruptcy, they'd sold their client contracts and intellectual property to a holding company. The same holding company that had recently acquired a 45% stake in Parker Precision, Pinnacle Investment Holdings. I worked through the night, cross-referencing equipment specs, analyzing failure patterns, building a comprehensive picture of what was really happening. This wasn't incompetence or simple corporate cost-cutting. This was systematic industrial sabotage disguised as digital transformation. The pieces fell into place like precision machined components. Blake Henderson wasn't a consultant trying to improve efficiency. He was a corporate assassin, planted to destroy companies from the inside so Pinnacle could acquire their assets at bankruptcy prices. By morning, I had compiled something that made my hands shake as I saved the file. Equipment failure projections based on Blake's maintenance changes, showing exactly when each system would fail. Safety violation documentation for his protocol eliminations, cross-referenced with OSHA standards. And most damning, a complete analysis of how his innovations matched the exact pattern that had destroyed Advanced Systems Solutions. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed to present it carefully. In manufacturing, timing is everything. Present your case too early and people dismiss it as speculation. Too late and the damage is already done. I arrived early before the security guards finished their rounds. The facility was quiet, just the hum of equipment in standby mode and the distant sound of the overnight cleaning crew finishing their work. I placed a single manila folder on Blake's desk with a simple note. For your review, equipment compliance and safety projections. Then I left for my 8 a.m. inspection of the new valve machining center, maintaining my normal routine while the evidence I'd compiled sat quietly on his desk like an unexploded bomb. When I returned at 10:30, something had clearly happened. Workers huddled in small groups, conversations stopping when I passed. 2 men in suits stood outside Chuck's office, serious-looking folks with badges visible in their jacket pockets. Federal investigators. Roberto hurried over, eyes wide. "Hank, what did you do?" I shared some technical concerns. "Blake ran straight to Chuck's office 30 minutes ago. Then these federal guys showed up. They're all in there now. Chuck, Blake, plus people I've never seen before." I nodded calmly and headed to my corner desk. The morning inspection had gone well. Our equipment was still running within specifications, but I documented several concerning trends that aligned perfectly with my projections. Aren't you worried? Roberto asked, following me. About what? About he gestured toward the executive offices where voices were definitely raised behind closed doors. No, I said simply. I'm not worried at all. My phone buzzed with texts. Shane from the assembly line heard Blake's in deep trouble. What's happening? Another from Wade in maintenance. Security's asking about maintenance schedules. You okay? Word was spreading through the facility. In a place like this, news travels fast. People could sense when something big was happening, and they all knew it connected to the file I'd left on Blake's desk. At noon, an email arrived from Chuck's assistant. Meeting requested, executive conference room immediate. The walk to the executive floor felt different this time. Not like a march to an execution, but like walking into a situation where the truth was finally going to matter. Eyes followed me, but they weren't looks of pity anymore. They were looks of curiosity, maybe even hope. I found Chuck seated at the head of the table, flanked by our legal counsel, Claire Rodriguez, and HR Director, Nina Johnson. The two federal agents sat along the side. FBI Economic Crimes Unit. Their badges now clearly visible. Blake was nowhere to be seen. Sit down, Hank Chuck said, his expression completely different from our last meeting. This wasn't the confident CEO who'd been ready to embrace the digital future. This was a man who just discovered his company was being systematically destroyed. I chose a seat directly across from him, placing my hands calmly on the table. The file you left for Blake, he began. We need to understand exactly what you found and how you found it. Everything in that folder came from our own systems, I replied. Maintenance records, safety reports, equipment specifications, plus publicly available bankruptcy filings from Advanced Systems Solutions. The female FBI agent, a woman in her 40s, leaned forward. Mr. Parker, I'm Agent Sarah Walsh with the FBI's Economic Crimes Unit. We've been tracking a pattern of suspicious corporate failures in the manufacturing sector. Your documentation provides crucial evidence in an ongoing investigation. Claire Rodriguez looked pale. Hank, you need to understand the implications of what you've uncovered. If your analysis is correct, Parker Precision has been targeted for systematic destruction disguised as efficiency improvements. The data supports that conclusion, I said. Blake's protocols match exactly the sequence that destroyed Advanced Systems Solutions, deferred maintenance leading to equipment failures, reduced quality control causing customer losses, safety violations triggering regulatory action. It's not incompetence. It's deliberately engineered corporate sabotage. Chuck rubbed his temples, the holding company that acquired 45% of our shares. They're the same group that picked up Advanced Systems Solutions assets after bankruptcy. Agent Walsh nodded. Pinnacle Investment Holdings has been involved in the acquisition of at least 8 manufacturing companies over the past 4 years. All followed the same pattern. Efficiency consultants implement changes that cause rapid failure. Then Pinnacle acquires the assets at bankruptcy prices, and Blake Henderson, Chuck asked, has been placed at 5 different companies as a digital transformation consultant over the past 4 years. All 5 subsequently failed and were acquired by Pinnacle-affiliated companies. The HR director cleared her throat. Blake claims this is all retaliation for your performance improvement plan. His legal team is calling it an elaborate conspiracy theory. I opened my laptop. Would you like to see the equipment failure timeline? I've modeled exactly when each system will fail based on his maintenance schedule changes. The first major failure should occur in 47 days. The hydraulic system on line 3. The bearing wear patterns are already visible if you know what to look for. Agent Walsh made notes. Mr. Parker, your documentation suggests you've been tracking these metrics for decades. Why? In precision manufacturing, equipment failure isn't random. There are always warning signs if you're paying attention. When you're responsible for components that keep deep water rigs operating safely, you develop habits. You document everything. You watch for patterns. You never assume something is coincidence when it might be deliberate sabotage. I thought about Linda, about the accident that took her life because someone else had made the same cost-cutting decisions Blake was pushing now. My wife died in an industrial accident 4 years ago. Deferred maintenance, eliminated safety protocols, the exact same pattern Blake is implementing here. When you've seen what happens when companies prioritize short-term profits over worker safety, you learn to recognize the warning signs. Chuck stood and walked to the window overlooking the production floor. 28 years, he said quietly. You've been building institutional knowledge while I was chasing quarterly improvements. Institutional knowledge isn't just data, I replied. It's understanding how things really work versus how they look on spreadsheets. It's knowing that when Roberto tells you something sounds wrong with a machine, you listen, because he's been listening to that machine for 15 years. Agent Walsh closed her notebook. Mr. Parker, we'll need your full cooperation in this investigation. Your documentation may be crucial in building cases against not just Blake Henderson, but the entire network he's working with, of course. Chuck turned back to the table. Hank, I owe you an apology. More than that, I owe you gratitude. You may have saved this company and protected 180 jobs. The door opened and Agent Walsh's partner entered, holding Blake in handcuffs. The kid who'd walked into my shop 3 days ago like he owned the place now looked like exactly what he was, a corporate criminal caught red-handed. Blake Henderson, Agent Walsh said formally, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit securities fraud, industrial espionage, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent. Blake's eyes found mine as they led him past the conference table. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine fear. He'd spent his career destroying companies and ruining lives, hiding behind corporate buzzwords and digital transformation promises. Now he was just another criminal in handcuffs. 6 months later, the federal investigation had expanded to include 15 companies across 12 states. Blake Henderson faced charges for industrial espionage, conspiracy, and securities fraud. Pinnacle Investment Holdings was under investigation for racketeering. The network of planted consultants was being dismantled piece by piece, each arrest leading to more evidence, more companies saved from deliberate destruction. Parker Precision not only survived but thrived. Our contracts were renewed with commendations for quality and safety. The crew had rallied around the idea that we'd been targeted because we were good at what we did, good enough to be worth stealing from and destroying. Chuck offered me the VP of manufacturing position with equity and a salary that would easily cover my daughter's medical school tuition. More importantly, he gave me budget to establish a formal knowledge transfer program, documenting the expertise our veteran machinists had accumulated over decades. I want you to write it all down, he said during my promotion ceremony, with the entire crew gathered in the main production area. Every process improvement, every safety protocol, every piece of institutional knowledge, we're not losing that again. Roberto stepped forward, grinning. Does this mean we keep doing the pressure test verification? Every single component, I replied. No shortcuts, no exceptions. That's how we honor the people who depend on our work. The applause from my crew, my people, was worth more than any salary increase. These weren't just workers anymore. They were partners in building something that mattered, something that lasted. I established mentorship programs pairing veteran machinists with younger workers, ensuring the knowledge transfer that Blake's automation would have eliminated forever. Jim Wilson started teaching precision measurement techniques to the next generation. Roberto began training welders on the exotic alloys that kept deep-water equipment functioning under crushing pressure. The safety awards kept coming. Our incident-free streak extended to 7 years. Insurance companies started using our protocols as models for other manufacturing facilities. Chuck framed the letter from OSHA commending our proactive safety culture and hung it in the main lobby where everyone could see it. I didn't want revenge. I wanted respect for the work we do, the knowledge we've built, and the responsibility we have to keep people safe. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't destroying your enemy. It's being so thoroughly right that they destroy themselves trying to destroy you. My name is Henry Parker, and I'm still here. Still building things that last, still proving that institutional knowledge and careful attention to detail matter more than fancy presentations and digital promises. In a world that's always chasing the next big disruption, sometimes the most radical act is simply doing your job well and paying attention to what's really happening around you. Some patterns only become visible with time, patience, and the wisdom that comes from actually building things instead of just talking about building them. In a world obsessed with disruption and innovation, the most dangerous enemy isn't the competitor who builds something better. It's the one who convinces you to tear down what already works. Real power doesn't come from having the newest ideas or the fanciest degree. It comes from understanding the difference between what looks good in a presentation and what actually keeps the lights on when everything else fails. Because when the presentations are over, when the consultants are gone, when the numbers stop looking pretty on paper, the only thing that matters is what still works. The machines, the processes, the people who know how to keep both running safely. That knowledge, that's something you can't download, can't outsource, and sure as hell can't fake in a PowerPoint presentation. Blake thought power came from manipulation and corporate connections. Pinnacle thought profit came from destruction and asset stripping. They never understood that the strongest systems aren't the newest ones. They're the ones built carefully, maintained patiently, and defended by people who know exactly why each safeguard exists. I didn't save Parker Precision by fighting harder. I saved it by paying attention longer, by remembering what killed Linda, by knowing why each maintenance interval existed, by refusing to forget lessons written in blood and steel. That's the part you can't outsource, you can't automate it, and you sure as hell can't fake it in a slide deck. In the end, all I did was my job. I documented. I warned. I waited. And when the truth finally surfaced, it spoke louder than any executive presentation ever could. Because real work leaves evidence, and real professionals don't need to announce their value. They prove it quietly, consistently, over decades.